All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. And in this video, we're going to talk about two of the best young fighters in boxing, Shakur Stevenson and Gervonta Tank Davis. Shakur Stevenson has something to say about Gervonta and the rest of the lightweights and said, look, man, I am taking the hard route to get this done while these guys are taking the easy path. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. In this video, we're going to be in the 130 to 135 pound weight divisions, talking about what Shakur Stevenson had to say about Gervonta Tank Davis, and I suppose the rest of the lightweights as well. Pretty much saying, look, man, that I'm going about it the hard way, unifying these belts, and I basically deserve more credit than what I'm getting as far as being one of the top guys in that division. Before I get into what he has to say, though, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you are a longtime subscriber, if you are a longtime supporter, thank you guys so much for continuing to watch the channel. We've been doing this for several years now, and your support on a video in, video out, live stream basis is just essential. Thank you guys so much for chopping it up with me every day about this boxing. If you are new to the channel, please accept my invitation to hit that subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you can be notified of when we release more videos. We are always having really good boxing conversations over here. Even if you disagree with me, we're going to have something good to talk about. All right, so let's get into this, man. Gervonta Davis, I do think, is getting under a lot of these guys' skin in the 130 and the 135 pound division because he is, how can we say, becoming one of the biggest names in the sport. He is selling out arenas. Just set an attendance record for boxing at the Barclays Center in New York. And I'm going to do this, make sure I'm very, very clear with this, that he set an attendance record for boxing. He did not set an attendance record for whatever event is there. But since the Barclays Center started putting on boxing matches, Gervonta Tank Davis versus Rolly Romero was the biggest event, the most tickets that they sold since that, they started that. And seeing as Gervonta Davis is from Baltimore and not the New Jersey area, the New York area, that tells you, along with the fact that he's been able to sell out arenas in Atlanta and in Baltimore, obviously, in Texas, in California, that this dude is man, he's pretty much a phenom right now as far as his popularity and the interest that people have watching him fight. There is a question, however, though, and a reasonable question as to who is the best fighter in that division, in the 135, in that range. Now, he's at 130 pounds. You have, and I think it's safe to say, or reasonable to say, that he is the best guy. Being a unified champion is the best guy at 130 pounds. You have Ogawa that has a belt, and I think Gutierrez has a belt for the WBA, but not very many people put Ogawa or Gutierrez on par with Shakur Stevenson. So after his win over Oscar Valdez and his win over Jamel Herring, he solidified himself as the top guy in that weight division. Now, as far as 135 pounds, who the best fighter is really, really up in the air. It could be Gervonta Davis. It could be Vasily Lomachenko. It could be Devin Haney. It ain't going to be George Kambosos. I'm sorry. I know we got a big fight coming up this weekend. However, nobody's going to convince me that guy's the best dude in that division until I see him literally beat every one of those other guys, or at least till I see him beat Haney and Lomachenko. He does that, then I may have to give it to him, but I feel safe to say we're never going to run into that eventuality. Now, that said, when Shakur Stevenson says that he's come up the hard way, that brings up this topic that I talked about with people on Twitter. If you don't follow me on Twitter, definitely follow me on Twitter and on Instagram. We got a lot of good stuff over there on Instagram. The easiest way to chop it up with me and have really good text back and forth or comments back and forth is to follow on Instagram. So if you're not, on Twitter, if you're not following me on Twitter, definitely follow me on Twitter. A conversation that's going on over there in Twitter was about whether or not Gervonta Tank Davis, because he has he done as much as all of these other champions, right? So you have Shakur Stevenson, who's a unified champion at 130 pounds, right? He was a champion at 126. He's a unified champion at 130, having beaten Valdez and having beaten Miguel Burchell. And then you have at 135 pounds, you have Vasily Lomachenko, who has been a 3-weight division champion and had unified 3 belts at 135 or at lightweight. You have George Kambosos, who has 3 belts at lightweight. Teofimo Lopez, who had 3 or 4, depending on how you want to count them, belts at lightweight. Same thing for actually the same thing goes for Teofimo Lopez as well. And Devin Haney, who would be, if he's able to beat George Kambosos, would be an undisputed champion, right? So when you look at all of these guys' accolades, you could say, well, Gervonta Davis never did that. Did these guys all take a harder route to where they are than what Gervonta Davis took? And I will tell you this, man, you can look at it a couple ways. Number one, just because all those guys that they beat had belts don't mean they are the best fighters. Well, the one consistent thing between George Kambosos, Teofimo Lopez, Vasily Lomachenko, Devin Haney, and Shakur Stevenson, make sure I got them all, George Kambosos, Devin Haney, Vasily Lomachenko, Devin Haney, and Shakur Stevenson, is that they all fought on Top Rank cards in order to do these things. Devin will have fought on a Top Rank card in order to do that, because in that particular weight class, all of the fighters that have the belts have been for a while all fighting with Top Rank. So just because, and those, especially the WBO belt, is getting passed between one Top Rank fighter and another Top Rank fighter. That doesn't mean that those guys are the best fighters necessarily when all of those fights are being made in-house, right? Now you have Gervonta Davis, on the other hand, who is not getting Top Rank, who people are saying, well, who have you fought? These guys didn't have belts, this, that, and the other thing. But you look at 130 pounds, Jose Pedraza. Jose Pedraza at 130 pounds wound up fighting for Top Rank and winning a title at 135 pounds. He's one of the guys that Vasily Lomachenko beat in order to unify the belts. I do believe that he was the WBO. Pedraza wound up beating Ray Beltran to be the WBO champion at 135 pounds and gave Vasily Lomachenko a much better gave Vasily Lomachenko a much harder time than he gave Gervonta Davis at 126 pounds when he was the reigning champion there. You also had Gervonta Davis actually move up to 140 pounds to fight Mario Barrios, who I would bet very few of these guys at 135 would be able to move up and beat because of his size, because of his length, because of his strength. So, it's up in the air about really who's done the most until these guys fight each other. I will, however, definitely tell you this, though. When we're looking at the fights down the line and we're saying what are some of the biggest, most significant fights that can be made in boxing on a actual performance in the ring, judging by their performance in the ring, my opinion is that Shakur Stevenson and Gervonta Davis is right there with, say, Errol Spence Jr. and Terrence Crawford. It's right there with, in my opinion, Canelo Alvarez versus David Benavidez, or Canelo Alvarez versus Jamal Charlo. It's right there with, one of the fights that should have been made that never got made, Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua. Just one of those fights where you have those guys matched up and would be a terrific, terrific fight to see. And I think Shakur Stevenson will be the one to win his way through all of that, the Top Rank in-house fighting that's going on. But I do want to definitely point out that, when we're looking at those belts in that weight class, just like we're looking at the belts at 147 with Errol Spence Jr., all of those fights that Errol has, he was able to make more easily because they were all represented. All of the guys are represented by Al Heyman. And although Terrence Crawford wants to point to, people making up side of the street arguments, it's not a made up argument. It's a legitimate thing that takes place when you have two different organizations and organizations have fighters within them. They are going to, is an easier thing and a more profitable thing for those particular networks to try to, or those particular promotional companies to try to encourage those fighters to make those fights with fighters that they represent, because they get to make money on both sides of it. And that's just a fact. It's not made up. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Deuces.